A single towering warrior strode out from the Philistine battle line and roared across the valley of Elah. The men of Israel trembled on the ridge. For 40 days, not one soldier dared to answer. The giant's name was Goliath of Gath. He stood over 9 feet tall, encased in bronze armor from head to toe. A bronze helmet covered his forehead. Scale armor, weighing 5,000 shekels, pressed against his chest. Bronze greaves protected his legs, and a bronze javelin hung between his shoulders. His spear shaft was like a weaver's beam, and the iron tip alone weighed 600 shekels. A shield-bearer walked before him, carrying an enormous shield. Every morning and every evening, Goliath stepped into the valley and bellowed across the narrow gap. He shouted for Israel to send out a single man to fight him. Winner takes all. The servants of the loser would serve the servants of the winner. The Israelites looked at each other in terror. King Saul stood silent in his armor. A young shepherd named David lived miles away in Bethlehem. His father Jesse had 8 sons, and David was the youngest. 3 of his older brothers had followed Saul to the battle lines. David stayed behind to guard the family's flock. One morning, Jesse called David to him. He loaded the boy with roasted grain, 10 loaves of bread, and 10 fresh cheeses for his brothers and their commander. David rose before dawn and left the sheep with a keeper. He walked for hours through the Judean hills until he reached the camp just as the battle cry was sounding. David dropped the supplies with the quartermaster and ran toward the front line. He found his brothers Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah standing among the soldiers. As David spoke with them, the Philistine stepped forward once more and shouted his defiance. The Israelite soldiers fell back in valley. The Israelite soldiers fell back in fear. David heard the taunt, and his face burned with anger. He turned to the soldiers around him. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? The men told him what Saul had promised. Great riches, the king's daughter in marriage, and freedom from taxes for the man who killed the giant. Eliab heard David asking questions and grew angry. He accused David of abandoning the sheep just to watch the battle. But David turned away and asked another soldier the same question. His words spread through the camp until they reached the ears of Saul himself. Saul summoned the shepherd boy to his tent. The king looked at David with doubt. "You are only a youth," he said. "Goliath has been a warrior since his youth." David answered without hesitation. He told Saul how a lion and a bear had come for his father's sheep. He had seized them by the hair, struck them down, and killed them both. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from this Philistine. Saul nodded and said, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." Saul dressed David in his own armor. He placed a bronze helmet on David's head and strapped a coat of mail across his chest. David buckled the king's sword over the armor and tried to walk. He stumbled. He could barely move. He told Saul he could not fight in these things because he was not used to them. David removed the armor and set it aside. David walked to a dry stream bed in the valley. He chose 5 smooth stones from the watercourse and placed them in his shepherd's pouch. With only his staff, his sling, and the stones, he walked toward the Philistine. Goliath lumbered forward with his shield-bearer ahead of him. When the giant saw David, he roared in contempt. The shepherd boy was nothing a euro, just a ruddy youth with no armor and no sword. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" Goliath shouted. He cursed David by his gods and promised to feed his flesh to the birds and wild beasts. David did not slow down. He called back across the valley that Goliath came with spear and javelin. But David came in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel. This day the Lord would deliver Goliath into David's hand so that all the earth would know there is a God in Israel. The giant charged. David ran toward him. In a single motion, David reached into his pouch, pulled out a stone, fitted it into the sling, and swung it around his head. He released. The stone cut through the air and struck Goliath square in the forehead. The giant's eyes went blank. He toppled forward and crashed face first into the dust.